In the moonlight, Wu Xiangnan stood by the window, lips slightly moving, calmly explaining his plan. Wang Mian frowned deeply after hearing it. Is this really feasible? A slim probability doesn't mean there's no hope at all. This is the best I can do. Perhaps you don't need to push yourself so hard. Wu Xiangnan turned around, looking into Wang Mian's eyes, and said seriously, if one day the person who killed the masked squad stands before you, could you tell yourself the same thing? Wang Mian fell silent. The current situation in the human circle is very complicated, with mysteriously appearing corpse beasts, increasingly turbulent society, and the Shangxi Association about to initiate the human circle destruction plan. This matter involves too much. I need a lot of time to prepare. For now, you should return to the Kazisai family first. After everything settles down, the Shangxi Association can send you back to Daxia. After speaking, Wu Xiangnan drained his teacup in one gulp, his eyes filled with determination. I can help you, Wang Mian suddenly spoke. Wu Xiangnan frowned. No, this has nothing to do with you, you don't need to get involved. It does, Wang Mian's eyes sparkled. Aren't you planning to strike at Takamagara? There's something I want in Takamagara. I'll help you kill Sisane, you help me get that item, it's a fair trade. I've now reached humanity's ceiling, capable of fighting against gods. With my help, your chances of success will greatly increase. Wang Mian's primary goal now was to become a god, then reverse time to save everyone from mask. And to become a god, he must resolve the issue of laws. The item the time god wants is in Takamagara. If he could get that item this time, he would have leverage to negotiate with the time god. Perhaps he could exchange this item for a path to godhood. Wu Xiangnan stared into Wang Mian's eyes, seeing no jest, and actually began to feel tempted. With the help of Wang Mian, a human ceiling possessing the power of time, his probability of killing Sisanu would indeed increase significantly. After pondering for a moment, he nodded. All right. Seeing Wu Xiangnan agree, Wang Mian's expression relaxed somewhat. He took a sip of tea and asked curiously, You've been to Takamagara, you should be the human who knows it best. Where is it? How do we get in? Takamagara cannot be found. Hearing this, Wang Mian was stunned. What do you mean? Spatially speaking, Takamagara's location is directly above Japan, but it's hidden in void space. Neither humans nor gods can find its existence. To enter it, one can only be guided by Takamagara itself. And those who can be guided by Takamagara are only the indigenous gods who grew up there. Neither humans nor foreign gods can be guided in. Then how did Blue Rain get in back then? At that time, we entered the mist, aiming to hunt down the fleeing Yamata no Orochi. Wang Mian thought briefly and figured out the reason. You mean you were mistakenly guided into Takamagara along with Yamata no Orochi? Correct. A reminiscent look appeared in Wu Xiangnan's eyes. We were chasing Yamata no Orochi through the mist, all the way to near the Japanese waters. Just when we were about to give up, a gate appeared above the sea level. Gate. A massive gate existing between illusion and reality. It stood majestically on the surging sea surface. No wave, however high, could leap over its threshold. When Yamata no Orochi fled to the front of that gate, the gate opened a crack and all of us were involuntarily drawn in. When we opened our eyes again, we were already in Takamagara. At the bottom of the deep sea, Merlin slowly opened his eyes. He turned his head, his profound gaze seeming to pierce through space, falling distantly on some place. Lin Chia's consciousness returned from the god's mental hospital, and seeing Merlin staring at some place, he asked curiously, Lord Merlin, what are you looking at? Wake up this sleeping young lady, we're almost there. Merlin stood up and said slowly, finally about to arrive. Lin Chia hadn't checked the time, but he could roughly feel that they had been here for at least 4 hours. Although the transformed whale's speed after revival wasn't fast, with such a long time, they should have completely left Daxia's border area. Lin Chia walked to Jialan's side and gently woke her up. Chia. After waking up, Jialan looked around confusedly. What happened? Has the loop been broken? Yes, we've left the fishing village. Lin Chia briefly explained what had happened to Jialan, had her retrieve, immortal, and brought her to Merlin's side. This is the great god of magic Merlin, the senior who rescued us from the loop. Great god of magic Merlin, hello, I'm Jialan. Jialan obediently repeated Lin Chia's form of address. Just call me Uncle Merlin. Merlin smiled kindly. He raised his magic staff in hand, lightly tapped the ground, and a magic circle instantly flashed beneath the three people's feet. Lin Qier and Jelon only felt their vision blur, and they were directly transported from inside the transformed whale to its external back. At this moment, the transformed whale had surfaced from the deep sea to the water's surface. The three stood on its broad back with distant waves splashing white spray, and through the misty fog, they could vaguely see the dim coastal outline on the other side of the horizon. Lin Qier found the distant outline somewhat familiar, and combining it with the whale's swimming distance during this period, he quickly realized and exclaimed in shock. Japan. Yes. You said the source of catastrophe is in Japan? No, the source of catastrophe isn't in Japan. Merlin stretched out his hand, pointing distantly towards a direction in the mist. It's there. Lin Qier and Jelon turned to look and saw at the misty horizon's end, above the rolling sea surface, a massive gate faintly outlined from the illusion, and before that gate that nearly reached the clouds an enormous pressure swept over. Lin Qier's eyes were filled with shock. When Lin Qier and others returned from Japan's human circle before, they hadn't seen this divine miracle-like thing. What is that? He couldn't help but ask. That is the Gate of Guidance. Merlin's deep blue magic robe fluttered in the sea wind as he pressed down on his hood with one hand, his eyes completely calm. The Gate of Guidance to Takamagahara, the realm of Japanese gods. The Gate of Takamagahara? Lin Qier was stunned. You mean behind that gate is Takamagahara? Merlin nodded slightly. That's also our destination. Among the rolling waves, the massive body of the transformed whale slowly approached the giant gate above the sea surface. Standing on the whale's back, Lin Qier's perspective of the giant gate changed from eye level to looking up, until finally he couldn't even see its entirety even when looking up. The shock in his heart was beyond description. This gate was simply too enormous. Although the transformed whale was already incredibly huge, it still appeared as tiny as a toy before this Gate of Guidance. As for Lin Qier and his two companions standing on its back, they were even less significant than specks of dust. Get ready, we're going in, Merlin suddenly said. Before Lin Qier could react, the giant gate before the whale silently opened a crack, and a blinding white light shone from behind it, forcing Lin Qier to close his eyes. An enormous gravitational force swept out from behind the gate. Whoosh! The ancient and heavy gate slowly opened. Under the terrifying gravitational force, Lin Qier and Jelon's bodies instantly lifted off the whale's back, like two specks of dust being sucked up by a vacuum cleaner, flying directly toward the gate. Merlin, who remained unmoved on the whale's back, had a glint flash through his eyes. Two magic circles appeared in his hands, and blue ropes shot out rapidly, instantly binding Lin Qier and Jelon's waists, forcefully pulling them back to his side. As the gravitational forces surged and the seawater churned, the whale's massive body automatically lifted from the sea surface and slowly floated through the gate. As the whale's form disappeared, the gate gradually closed. After a muffled sound, the portal sealed shut without a gap and gradually faded from the sea's surface, as if it had never existed. When Lin Qier opened his eyes, the world around him was nothing but crimson. A bloody ocean rolled beneath the whale, with broken flesh and weapon fragments occasionally surging among the waves. The blood-scented breeze entered Lin Qier's nostrils, making him furrow his brows involuntarily. His gaze swept across the surroundings before finally looking up at the sky, where an incredibly massive crimson blood moon hung silently in the heavens. This red moon was 10 times larger than the one Lin Qier had seen in the fishing village. It was like a massive red disk covering the sky, inlaid at the peaks of distant mountains, its light falling on every corner of this world. Lin Qier stared at that moon for a long while before coming to his senses, turning to look at Merlin in shock. Merlin's expression was equally grave. Lord Merlin, where is this? Lin Qier asked tentatively. Didn't I just say? After passing through the Gate of Guidance, this is naturally Takamagahara. But isn't Takamagahara supposed to be Japan's realm of the gods? How can it be like this? Lin Qier looked around in confusion at the bloody ocean, the shattered land, the desolate and eerie towering buildings in the distance, and that heart-palpitating red moon in the sky. It didn't look like a place where gods would dwell, but rather like hell. Merlin stared at the sky for a long while, raised his right hand and pointed at that red moon. Because of it. The red moon. Lin Chia paused for a moment then added, or, the Cthulhu gods? There's no fundamental difference between the two, Merlin answered. The red moon exists because the Cthulhu gods broke through a corner of the seal, and after their power leaked out, it formed a regional contamination radiation, projecting from the moon onto Earth. When looking at the moon from contaminated areas, it appears red. The information contained in these words was too overwhelming, leaving Lin Chia stunned. When Lin Chia was in the fishing village, he had already learned that the Cthulhu gods existed on the moon. Combined with Qin Yangrong's words about eventual return and the Seraph gatekeeper's identity, he had guessed that the Cthulhu gods' presence on the moon wasn't of their own volition, but due to some other factors. From Merlin's words, what kept Cthulhu on the moon was some kind of seal. The Cthulhu gods were artificially sealed on the moon? Lin Chia asked in shock. What kind of being could seal an entire pantheon on the moon? I don't know, Merlin shook his head. That level of fate is beyond my ability to perceive. And besides, whether Cthulhu can even be considered a pantheon remains uncertain. Hearing these words, Lin Chia was stunned. What do you mean? The essence of the Cthulhu gods is quite different from other pantheons on Earth, Merlin contemplated as he spoke. Whether it's Chinese mythology, Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology, or Indian mythology, they all have traceable historical and cultural foundations, carrying heavy destinal implications. But those things on the moon are different. Let me ask you, do you know where Cthulhu mythology originated? Lin Chia shook his head blankly. No? Then do you know when this pantheon appeared? Who proposed it? How was it passed down? Lin Chia's brows furrowed as he thought seriously for a long while, but still shook his head. In his memory, there was absolutely no information about this. Don't you find it strange? Merlin said slowly. A pantheon suddenly appeared in everyone's consciousness without any foundation, religion, or historical accumulation, as if it was forcibly inserted into human thought. No one even questioned the authenticity of this pantheon, it just existed as a matter of course. Are they really mythology? Lin Chia was dumbfounded. Numerous thoughts churned in his mind, impacting his perception of reality. But, if Cthulhu isn't mythology, then what are they? Lin Chia asked bewilderedly. I don't know, Merlin shook his head. All of this is just my doubts and conjectures. It's still too distant for you to worry about. Lin Chia took a deep breath, setting aside those complex thoughts. Just as he was about to ask something else, the whale beneath their feet suddenly began to shake violently. The crimson ocean suddenly churned, and a deep humming sound emanated from within the whale. Merlin's expression changed slightly as he grabbed Lin Chia and Jalan. A magic circle suddenly opened, and the three figures disappeared from the whale's back. When they reappeared, they had left that bloody ocean and arrived at the edge of a shore filled with debris. Lin Chia turned to look back, only to see the massive corpse gradually sinking among the surging waves. A blood-red light spread out from within it, instantly covering the entire sea area. The red light swept across the entire sea area, then rushed ashore like a ring-shaped radiation wave after a nuclear explosion, rapidly bursting outward. Mind magic, demon banishing ring. Mind magic, clear mind and spirit. Mind magic, emotion weakening spell. Merlin gently raised his magic staff, and 3 white magic circles opened simultaneously above his and Lin Chia's heads, flowing into their bodies respectively. As the red wave swept over the 3 of them, Lin Chia felt his breath catch for a moment before quickly returning to normal. Lord Merlin, this is. Do you know about whale fall? Lin Chia nodded slightly. I've heard a bit about it. It refers to the process when a whale dies and sinks to the seafloor, where its body's nutrients nourish the ocean. Merlin watched the transformed whale's corpse gradually sinking into the blood sea and slowly spoke. That transformed whale absorbed a large amount of red moon essence. After its fall, all the red moon essence stored in its body dispersed. Given its terrifying size, the red moon essence impact from this whale fall is equivalent to a small red moon concentrated thousands of times. If the moon in the sky is a continuous weak influence, then this transformed whale that fell into the blood sea is like a contamination nuclear bomb that explodes instantly. The pollution concentration here now is probably thousands of times more than what you encountered in the fishing village. Thousandfold pollution? Lin Chia's expression darkened as he looked at the world surrounded by red light, feeling somewhat anxious. The red moon in the fishing village had already tortured them to the point where death seemed preferable. With 1,000 times the pollution concentration here, humans probably couldn't survive even a second. I've placed 3 layers of mind magic on you which can barely resist the red moon pollution here, allowing you to move freely, though it can only last for 1 day at most. Merlin turned to look at Jialon beside them and said with a smile. As for this young lady, she probably doesn't need my help. Jialon nodded obediently. Lin Chia looked at the transformed whale's corpse in the distance, then at the red moon overhead, the confusion in his eyes growing deeper. Lord Merlin, I understand less and less. He shook his head and said, why did this transformed whale return to Takamagara? Why is there a red moon here? Where did the gods of Takamagara go? And what exactly is the catastrophe you mentioned? Merlin smiled slightly and waved his hand in the void, and an ancient western carriage appeared beside him. The silver-white carriage cast a faint glow under the red moon, and 3 ghostly white horses wreathed in holy light stood quietly before the carriage. Get in, I'll explain everything bit by bit. Wang Mian took a sip of tea and continued asking. What was it like inside Takamagara? Very strange. Wu Xiangnan recalled for a moment, frowning as he spoke. After we passed through that gate, there was an ocean of blood sea, with a nauseating bloody smell permeating the air everywhere. It didn't look anything like the place where gods were supposed to live in mythology. Moreover, there was a red moon hanging in the sky there. Just as you just said, under that moonlight, our emotions became uncontrollably agitated. Red moon. Wang Mian instantly thought of the corpse beast's crimson eyes as if understanding something and muttered, so the red moon essence affecting the human circle was spreading from Takamagara? Under that moonlight our thinking became somewhat radical. Instead of choosing to leave the way we came immediately, we chose to continue pursuing the Yamata no Orochi. When it first attacked the coastal areas of Great Xia, only 3 pairs of eyes among its 8 heads were blood red, but after returning here, the number of its red eyes rapidly increased, 4 pairs, 5 pairs. When 7 pairs of its eyes had turned red, it actually gave up running and turned around to fight us frantically. You should know that when it was in Great Xia, it had already been beaten to near death by your mask and the Sword Saint. We never expected it could counterattack. In the end, though it took some effort, we still managed to kill it. Wang Mian carefully recalled for a moment and nodded. Now that you mention it, I do remember that the Yamata no Orochi that suddenly invaded Great Xia's coast back then had several red eyes, very similar to being polluted by the red moon. So, it had escaped from Takamagara back then and invaded Great Xia while in a state of agitation and loss of control. It should be so. Wu Xiangnan continued. After we slayed the Yamata no Orochi, we also realized that something seemed wrong with our emotions and immediately chose to return the way we came. But it was already too late. Did Japanese gods find you? No, not gods. It was a group of monsters with black liquid flowing from their bodies. Wu Xiangnan's eyes showed recollection. Their eyes were blood red like that red moon. They surged in from all directions. Their numbers were terrifying, and the energy fluctuations they emitted were at least at the unlimited level. Wang Mian thought of the monster killed by Yuzuri Tekishiro, corpse beasts. Yes, that's the name I gave them because I saw with my own eyes several of these monsters crawl out from the Yamata no Orochi's corpse, so I called them corpse beasts. Wu Xiangnan continued, there were too many of them, we were forced to keep moving deeper to try to shake them off. Finally we met him. Wu Xiangnan took a deep breath, slowly exhaled and his eyes flickered with hatred. I will never forget that scene. Under the blood-like red moon he wore a blood-stained divine robe, wore a red magatama on his chest, held the Kusanagi sword, and sat atop a mountain of divine corpses that reached into the sky. He was Susanoo. Takamagara. A silver carriage moved swiftly through the blood-colored world. Lin Chia and Jialon sat on one side, while Merlin sat alone on the other side of the carriage, smiling as he looked at the 2 people opposite him, a hint of playfulness appearing between his brows. Sir Seven Knight, if you have any questions, ask them now. Lin Chia nodded and organized his thoughts. What exactly happened to Takamagara? Merlin pointed to the red moon in the sky and said, more than 50 years ago the Cthulhu gods broke a corner of the seal and projected the source of pollution here, forming this red moon. You just came from that fishing village, so you should be very clear about what this red moon can do. Make the gods of Takamagara kill each other? Lin Chia frowned and asked, that red moon can affect deities? Takamagara's location is already above Japan, closest to the moon, so the intensity of pollution it receives is much greater than that fishing village. Moreover, what you saw in the fishing village wasn't a full moon. The true full moon only appeared for an instant at the end of the closed loop. Even so, shouldn't there have been time to react? Lin Chia frowned. When that red moon first appeared, didn't the gods of Takamagara take any measures? Of course they did. Merlin's gaze drifted to the blood-red world outside the carriage, several starlight traces crossing his eyes as if peering at something. After the red moon appeared, the gods of Takamagara found a way to block the red moon's radiation, resisting this contamination. After the red moon became ineffective, they began to use another method. Lin Chia seemed to realize something. The whale fall? Correct. Merlin nodded slightly. The red moon's contamination was more like a gradually accumulating chronic toxin. As time passed, emotions and rationality would slowly lose control. But this method wasn't enough to control the gods of Takamagara. Since chronic contamination didn't work, they had to create a more intense contamination, and this contamination itself had to be able to pass through the welcoming gate to enter Takamagara. So they turned their attention to the transformed whale corpse at the bottom of the deep sea. The transformed whale was incredibly huge, itself at the god-level realm, capable of carrying massive amounts of contamination, and it had the qualification to enter Takamagara. Once placed inside Takamagara, it would be like a nuclear bomb loaded with massive contamination, instantly exploding and driving all Takamagara gods into madness, completely losing their rationality. At that time, a completely insane pantheon would bring an unprecedented disaster to the world. Lin Chia's mind was violently shaken. In his mind he could already envision a group of crimson-eyed, mad and violent gods bursting out of the welcoming gate, carrying vast seas of blood, sweeping across the world. And closest to Japan was Desya. Once the maddened Takamagara gods broke out, Desya would inevitably be the first to suffer. Keep in mind this was over 50 years ago. In that era, Desya's gods were still languishing in reincarnation, there were no war fortresses guarding the borders, and technological development was relatively backward. Although in that era there were still night watchmen, human pinnacles and special teams. But could they really stop this catastrophe? Even if they could stop it, what terrible price would Desya have to pay? So, this is the catastrophe you spoke of. A bitter smile appeared at the corner of Lin Chia's mouth. But unexpectedly, a time god from Desya emerged from the river of time. Wonder appeared in Merlin's eyes. He was very clever. He knew he couldn't possibly contend with the gods of Takamagara, nor could he prevent the red moon's descent. So he found the true source of this catastrophe and used the simplest yet most effective method to lock the time of that fishing village. With this lock, the transformed whale couldn't be revived in time, and the Takamagara gods didn't fall into madness because of it. He forcibly delayed this catastrophe by more than 50 years. He rewrote the history of this world. At this moment, Lin Chia's mind once again recalled that elderly figure sitting alone on a small boat, drifting on the sea surface. But he still couldn't understand why the elderly Wang Mian sent them to Japan. Was it related to this catastrophe? Just then Lin Chia seemed to think of something and turned to look outside the window. Lord Merlin, if according to what you say he prevented the transformed whale from returning to Takamagara, then why did Takamagara still end up like this? The existence of all things has its originally predetermined trajectory. This is fate. Although he went back to the past and changed history, fate itself possesses the ability to self-correct. Some things are destined to happen. This statement from Merlin sounded familiar to Lin Chia. If he remembered correctly, Black Pupil had said something similar back then. But he still couldn't fully understand. Seeing the confusion still on Lin Chia's face, Merlin patiently explained. For example, even if he prevented the transformed whale from returning to Takamagara, would the Cthulhu gods sealed on the moon not take other measures? Would they completely give up just because one method didn't work? Of course not. They might use other methods in another form to lead everything to the result they wanted. This is what I mean by fate's ability to self-correct. Some people, some events, their existence and fate's trajectory are predetermined. Even if you go back in time and change history repeatedly, what's meant to happen will still happen, just possibly through another unexpected path. What he achieved was already quite remarkable. Lin Chia nodded. You mean, The catastrophe didn't disappear because of his actions, it was just delayed? You could say that. Then what exactly happened to the current Takamagara? Lin Chia returned to the initial question. The transformed whale's return was prevented, and the Takamagara gods found a way to resist the red moon. I don't understand how this place became like this. Merlin's fingers lightly tapped the window frame, his gaze growing more profound. A traitor appeared among the Takamagara gods. A traitor. After the Takamagara gods successfully resisted the red moon, some gods among them pledged allegiance to the red moon, directly breaking down the defenses from within and igniting a divine war. Under the red moon's contamination, numerous gods fought each other, ultimately turning Takamagara into this state. Lin Chia pondered thoughtfully. From external conditions, the Takamagara gods indeed shouldn't have fallen, but if problems arose internally, that was different. Lin Chia opened his mouth about to ask something more, when he suddenly paused and frowned, looking outside the window. At the edge of the desolate land, several giant figures dripping with black liquid slowly stood up. Their enormous silhouettes cast demonic shadows under the red moon, and pairs of crimson eyes fell upon the speeding carriage, flashing with fierce and violent light. They roared like ferocious beasts catching the scent of blood, running on all fours towards the carriage. As soon as his mental power sensed these monsters, Lin Chia's brows furrowed. What are those? Merlin didn't even look at them, calmly saying, after the divine war many gods fell here. Under the influence of that red moon, their remaining divine power merged with the violent energy left at their death, forming monsters similar to grudges. You can call them corpse beasts, like a certain young person who's been here before. A certain young person who's been here before? Corpse beasts? Lin Chia found that since Merlin left the hospital, his words were becoming increasingly difficult to understand. What should we do? Lin Chia looked back at those disgusting monsters pursuing them relentlessly and asked. Merlin didn't speak, just lifted his head and glanced back indifferently. Just a few flies, swat them and be done with it. As his words fell, several deep blue magic circles opened at the back of the carriage. Devastating beams of light surged forth like swords, instantly engulfing the corpse beasts that were closely pursuing them. They didn't even have time to let out agonized roars before dissolving into the air. Blue flame embers danced in the air, and the blood-like sky once again fell into dead silence. Jalan's jaw dropped in shock. Lin Chia's body relaxed slightly against the chair back, a smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. With Merlin by his side, even though they were in Takamagara which had fallen to the red moon, Lin Chia felt unprecedented peace of mind, as if this wasn't some place of disaster where gods had perished, but rather their own backyard. This damn sense of security. Praise the god of magic. Lin Chia's gaze swept outside the window, and seeing that the carriage wasn't heading into the depths of Takamagara but instead circling along the outskirts unhurriedly in an arc, he became somewhat puzzled. Lord Merlin, where are we going? Merlin smiled slightly. Going to prepare your gift. Susanoo killed all the gods of Takamagara? Hearing Wu Xiangnan's description, shock appeared on Wang Mian's face. Although they had known for a long time that the Blue Rain team had accidentally entered Takamagara and been wiped out by Susanoo, the details had always been the highest secret of the Night Watchers, and even he didn't have the clearance to know. Now hearing about what happened that year from Wu Xiangnan's mouth, he was naturally extremely surprised. Perhaps we're not sure either. Wu Xiangnan shook his head. We only rushed to the deepest part of Takamagara. We didn't go anywhere else, so we don't know if there were any gods in other places. Then he attacked you? Wu Xiangnan slowly closed his eyes and said calmly, yes, after we entered that area he jumped down from atop the mountain of corpses with the Kusanagi sword and began hunting us. He was too strong and he wielded both divine artifacts, the Kusanagi sword and the Yasakani no Magatama. He was on a completely different level from divine beasts like Yamata no Orochi. In just a moment we were completely defeated. After the final flash of his sword I died. When I was reborn and revived, Susanoo had already left, and only the corpses of my companions remained. I rushed out from the depths alone, encountered several siege attacks from corpse beast groups, spent several lives, and barely escaped Takamagara to return to Great Xia. Wu Xiangnan slowly put down his teacup, the tea inside long since cold and the atmosphere fell into silence. After a long while Wang Mian finally spoke words of comfort. At least you survived and made it back here. Wu Xiangnan made no response. So, the Night Watcher's higher-ups actually knew about the changes in Takamagara several years ago? Yes. Wu Xiangnan nodded. After returning to Great Xiao, I reported everything I saw in Takamagara. It became one of the Night Watcher's highest secrets, but even knowing about it was useless. Wang Mian thought carefully. Indeed. Although Wu Xiangnan brought back information about Takamagara's situation to the Night Watchers of that time, it was just an unsolved mystery. After all, they had no answers about what exactly happened in Takamagara, whether all the gods there were really dead or what that red moon was. Taking a step back, even if the Night Watchers knew that Takamagara had completely fallen, they couldn't take any action. After all, even if only Susanoo remained in Takamagara, in those years before the gods of Great Xia had awakened and Zhou Ping hadn't become a god, there was no one in Great Xia who could fight Susanoo, let alone kill him. So this earth-shattering secret could only be buried in the deepest part of the Night Watcher's archives. Until today. Great Xia. Sui Qing, wearing a dark red cloak, walked through the dusty archives and finally stopped in front of a gray wall. He reached out his palm and lightly pressed a corner of the wall. A silver box with a technological feel popped out from the wall. Sui Qing brought his eyes close to the box. A beam of light scanned across and a cold electronic voice sounded in the archives. Highest authority verification passed. The next moment, the gray wall in front of Sui Qing silently opened, revealing a narrow white secret room. This secret room was enclosed by thick metal walls, solid as a fortress, and its interior was very simple. Apart from a metal rack in the center and the few documents placed on it, everywhere else was empty. Sui Qing stepped up to this metal rack and stopped. His fingertips slowly slid across the surface of these documents. Songnan City Miracle City Files, Suspected Heaven Court Fragment Investigation Files, Takamagara Red Moon Files. These documents were very few in number but spanned a large range of years. The Songnan City Miracle City Files were from about 12 years ago, while the Suspected Heaven Court Fragment Investigation Files were from over 70 years ago. Among these files, there was even a parchment from the Han Dynasty, preserved using scientific methods. These files were the Night Watcher's highest-level secrets. Each one taken out was enough to overturn most people's understanding of the world. Sui Qing's gaze didn't linger on these files. He directly took out the Takamagara Red Moon files and left the secret room. In his other hand he held a newly completed confidential document, the ink still fresh. Ningchang County Fishing Village Time Loop Investigation Files. He sat down at the desk in the archives, placed these two documents together and carefully read through them, comparing them to each other. Time passed minute by minute, the sky outside gradually darkened, and after who knows how long, Sui Qing finally raised his head and rubbed his tired eyes. Takamagara. Red Moon. What connection is there between these two? Feels like something is still missing. He let out a long sigh, stood up from his chair, put both documents back in the secret room, and walked towards the exit of the archives. Just then a crisp phone ringtone sounded. Sui Qing took out his phone and answered the call. Hello. What? Sui Qing's brows furrowed tightly, his expression becoming grave. You still haven't found Lin Qier and Jiawan's whereabouts? Ningchang County. By the coastline. Among the charred ruins of the fishing village, dozens of members from the Night Watcher's logistics department were walking around with cameras and surveying equipment, carefully recording something. Outside the yellow warning tape by Li Pengpeng, Chao Yuan, Shen Qingzhu, and Jiang Er stood silently by the shore, watching the white waves rolling in from the horizon without saying a word. Why? Bai Li Pengpeng's eyes were filled with anxiety. The exploration work is almost done. Why haven't we found 7 knights and Sister Jilin yet? Don't rush. Shen Qingzhu said calmly with a cigarette in his mouth. The deep-sea rescue team is still searching below. There should be results soon. But they've already searched twice. Then we'll wait for them to search a third time. Shen Qingzhu took a deep breath and continued. Right now, waiting is our only option. Bai Li Pengpeng pressed his lips together, his eyes fixed on the sea surface, saying nothing. Chao Yuan and Jiang Er stood nearby, their expressions equally grave. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Several dark red figures shot out from the seabed, circled briefly in the sky, and landed steadily in front of the 4. They were the deep-sea rescue team sent by the Night Watcher headquarters, all with water-related prohibitions, possessing high mobility and perception abilities in the deep sea, a professional team for deep-sea missions. How did it go? Bai Li Pangpang anxiously asked when he saw them emerge. The rescue team members exchanged glances and shook their heads helplessly. We've searched all the surrounding waters, but still haven't found any trace of them. Bai Li Pangpang's face visibly turned pale. Just as he was about to say something, a jeep came speeding along the road. With a screeching brake sound, the jeep stopped by the shore and a long-haired man wearing a research coat and glasses stepped out, walking quickly towards them. Qingyu. Seeing this figure, everyone's eyes lit up. But soon they noticed that the Qingyu standing here now was somewhat different. Long black hair, messy beard, unkempt face. Compared to the once refined Qingyu, he now looked like a wild man. Qingyu, what happened to you? Jiang Er asked puzzledly. We'll talk about that later. Qingyu's gaze swept across the four and seeing they were all unharmed, his worried heart finally relaxed, but he soon frowned again. Where are 7 knights and Jilin? We haven't found them. Chao Yuan spoke bitterly. We've searched the entire fishing village area, but still can't find either of them. Bai Li Pangpang's anxiety was almost overflowing from his eyes as he grabbed Qingyu's shoulders and couldn't help asking, Qingyu, what should we do? The erasing power of the time law first appeared from the sea, and they clearly remembered that Lin 7 knights and Jilin had gone to the seabed. Although no one had mentioned this possibility, everyone had flashed through their minds the worst outcome. They had been erased by the time law. The expressions of all four except Qingyu were unprecedentedly grim. Even the usually calm Shin Qingju's eyes flickered with worry. Qingyu's gaze swept over them, and after a moment of silence, not only did he not panic, but a smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. What are you worried about? Worried that they've been erased by time. Qingyu shook his head. Actually, not finding them is a good thing. The four were stunned. Don't forget, 7 knights was with Jilin. If the time law really erased them first with Jilin's immortality, at least one of them would have survived. And now neither of them can be found, which means they likely encountered some other incident at the bottom of the sea and disappeared from here. Although we don't know where they went, there's still a high probability they're alive. After hearing Qingyu's analysis, the others' eyes gradually brightened, hope rekindling in them. So that's it. Bai Li Pangpang let out a long breath, patting his chest. You scared me. So what should we do next? Expand the search area. All eyes turned to Qingyu again. Seeing everyone's emotions had been calmed, Qingyu pondered for a moment, his eyes flickering with light. No, searching like this is too slow. Let's return to headquarters and find someone else. Great. Let's go. Before Qingyu could finish, Bai Li Pangpang was the first to rush to the jeep, quickly fastening his seatbelt, then turned his head and waved at his companions still standing there. What are you waiting for? Get in the car. The others quickly came to their senses and rushed to the jeep. They had absolute faith in their vice-captain Qingyu. Since he said returning to headquarters could help find Lin 7 knights, there was no hesitation, they just needed to follow through with maximum efficiency. Qingyu walked behind everyone, smiled helplessly and also got into the jeep. Without Lin 7 knights' cloud somersault or a dragon to ride, and Bai Li Pangpang's Yaoguang couldn't carry so many people at once, they could only go to the nearest military base to take a plane back to Beijing. Fortunately, Jiang Er's coffin could be placed directly in the trunk, and one jeep could just fit the 4 of them with Bai Li Pangpang driving, Chao Yuan in the passenger seat, and Shin Qingju sitting in the back with Qingyu. The jeep sped away on the highway. Knock knock knock. Come in. Lu Wuwei, wearing a yellow uniform, opened the office door and walked up to Zhuqing. Why did you call me here so urgently? Lu Wuwei asked puzzledly. Zhuqing stood up and spoke seriously. I want to ask you to find someone. Hearing these words, Lu Wuwei raised an eyebrow. Is it Wang Mian again? I've tried many times. My prohibition can't find him. You couldn't find him before because he didn't exist in this time. Zhuqing explained seriously. Now that the fishing village's loop has been broken, your prohibition can take effect. Lu Wuwei was stunned. He took out an unfilled delivery receipt from his pocket, grabbed a pen from the desk and quickly wrote Wang Mian in the customer name field. He held the receipt between his fingers and sensed for a moment. Indeed, I can sense his general location now. Lu Wuwei nodded, immediately put on his helmet that was placed aside, and walked towards the office door. Wait. Swaching called out to him. What is it? Try to find Lin 7 nights too. Lu Wuwei hesitated for a moment, took out a second receipt, and followed the same process by writing Lin 7 nights' name. After sensing for a moment, he opened his eyes in surprise. Did you find him? Swaching asked worriedly. Yes. Lu Wuwei nodded. Both of them are in the same direction. Left Qing breathed a sigh of relief. Wang Mian and Lin Chia could both be sensed, which meant they were still alive. As long as they remained in this world, Lu Wuwei could find and bring them back. Then I'll leave it to you, Left Qing said seriously. Those two are very important to Great Xia. Don't worry. Lu Wuwei smiled slightly, tucking the 2 delivery receipts into the inner pocket of his jacket. For deliveries, I'm a professional. He turned and walked towards the office door. After taking 2 steps, he seemed to remember something and quietly stepped back. What's wrong? Left Qing asked puzzledly. Lu Wuwei held out his hand and said expressionlessly, Please pay the delivery fee, thank you. Lu Wuwei, wearing his uniform and helmet, walked out of the Night Watcher's headquarters. His behavior was so natural, and combined with this outfit that was inconspicuous in a sense, nobody seemed to realize that a human powerhouse had silently passed by their side. Even within 100 meters of him, there was a delivery rider who had just finished his deliveries, wearing a cap with a little yellow duck on top, who smiled and waved at him, riding his electric bike next to Lu Wuwei to chat. You're making deliveries too? Lu Wuwei nodded. I just finished my deliveries too, not many orders today. Hey brother, where's your delivery going? Lu Wuwei pondered for a moment. Not sure, seems to be overseas. Delivery rider. Lu Wuwei ignored the delivery rider's strange look and started his electric bike. He had barely driven 20 meters from the headquarters entrance when a car came roaring from afar, screeching to a halt in front of the Night Watcher's headquarters. Bailey Pang Pang unbuckled his seatbelt, jumped out of the car, and rushed towards the headquarters entrance without looking back. After getting out of the car, and Qingyu's peripheral vision caught sight of the delivery rider standing at the entrance, paused for a moment, then quickly came to his senses and called out to Bailey Pang Pang. Stop running. He's right here. Bailey Pang Pang suddenly turned back and rushed over. Is it him? Bailey Pang Pang glanced at the confused delivery rider in front of him and suddenly realized, I get it, Qingyu, you're looking for that legendary human powerhouse known as the 10,000-mile soul tracker. How clever. And Qingyu nodded. Right now, only Mr. Lu can help us find Chi'er and Jilin. But have you ever seen what he looks like? With so many delivery riders, how can you be sure it's him? Jiang Er couldn't help asking. Never seen him, but I heard that person wears a little yellow duck on top of his cap. Bailey Pang Pang looked at the little yellow duck on the delivery rider's cap, then at the Night Watcher's headquarters entrance behind him and smiled slightly. Besides, how could an ordinary delivery rider come out of the Night Watcher's headquarters? Chao Yuan walked up to the confused delivery rider and said solemnly, Mr. Lu, we are members of the 5th Special Squad of Great Xia Night Watchers, the Night Curtain Squad. We'd like to ask for your help in finding someone. What are you talking about? The delivery rider looked at the people in front of him as if they were crazy. Haven't you got the wrong person? Mr. Lu. As Chao Yuan was about to say more, Shen Qingzhu quietly patted his shoulder. You really have got the wrong person. Chao Yuan turned his head in confusion. Shen Qingzhu pointed to the distance and said, Over there, there's another delivery rider who just left. And the little yellow duck on his head can fly. After him. High plane of heaven. The silver carriage was speeding through the blood-colored world. Collapsed giant pillars were everywhere, broken temples showed no trace of their former glory, and under the red moon scattered limbs of corpses lay on the ground, rippling with an eerie red light. Lin Chia looked at the scene outside the window and, as if discovering something, turned to ask Merlin with confusion. Lord Merlin, why haven't we seen a single complete corpse all along our way? Logically, even if there had been a fierce battle of gods, there should have been at least some relatively complete divine corpses left. All Lin Chia had seen along the way were severed hands or feet and other body parts, with even torsos being extremely rare. Merlin glanced outside the window and calmly said, Because the complete corpses have all been gathered in the deepest part of the high plane of heaven. Gathered. Lin Chia quickly caught the key point. You mean someone No, some god is collecting these divine corpses? More or less. I thought all the gods of the high plane of heaven were dead. Lin Chia stopped mid-sentence as if realizing something and then asked, is it Susanoo? Seeing Lin Chia guess the answer in one try, Merlin was somewhat surprised. How did you know? One of my seniors' team died at his hands years ago. If there's only one god left in the high plane of heaven, it can only be him. Lin Chia recalled what he had heard from the instructor at the training camp and answered. Merlin nodded slightly. Your guess is correct. In the entire high plane of heaven, he's the only god left, and these corpses were all collected by him. Is he the traitor you mentioned? No, I never said he was the traitor. Hearing this answer, Lin Chia was stunned. He had thought the destruction of the gods of the high plane of heaven was caused by the traitor, and following this logic, Susanoo, who survived, was very likely to be the traitor. But thinking again, something didn't seem right. If Susanoo was the traitor, there would have been no need to kill all the gods of the high plane of heaven. On the contrary, he should have waited until the gods completely lost their sanity, then opened the gates of summoning wide to release all the insane gods into the outside world. That would have made more sense. But if Susanoo isn't the traitor, then who is? What exactly happened to the high plane of heaven back then? The questions in Lin Chia's mind kept multiplying and he couldn't help but ask. Merlin didn't answer. He glanced outside the window and raised his palm, and the silver carriage slowly came to a stop. Merlin pointed to a blood-stained, broken palace outside and said, the truth you want to know is all recorded there, go see for yourself. Lin Chia looked in the direction Merlin was pointing, seemingly confused about why Merlin wouldn't tell him directly, but after a moment's hesitation he still jumped down from the carriage and walked straight towards the palace. Jilin stood up, politely bowed to Merlin, then followed closely behind Lin Chia. After the two had walked far away, Merlin's eyes narrowed slightly, and with a lift of his finger, the 3 mental magic spells on himself were simultaneously erased. A flash of red passed through his eyes and quickly disappeared. Merlin took a deep breath, his expression returning to normal. He got down from the carriage and used his magic staff to lightly trace something on the ground. Strands of deep blue light seeped into the earth as if they had never existed. Lin Chia and Jialan walked to the entrance of the broken palace. After hesitating for a moment, the former stopped. What's wrong? Jialan asked puzzledly when she saw Lin Chia stop. Jialan. Lin Chia turned around, his eyes fixed on Jialan's, and spoke solemnly. Promise me. Promise what? Jialan was stunned, and as if thinking of something, her cheeks flushed red. In the future, without my permission, never transfer immortality to me arbitrarily. Lin Chia's eyes were full of seriousness. Jialan, who had been full of anticipation, heard these words and the light in her eyes dimmed, seeming somewhat disappointed. Also, even if immortality is transferred to me, if I ask you to take it back, you must take it back. Understand? Lin Chia's expression was extremely serious. Although they had left the fishing village, it didn't mean that Lin Chia had forgotten what happened after the time erasure began. Lin Chia could accept dying in battle, but he couldn't accept surviving alone through the sacrifice of his teammates. He absolutely wouldn't allow Jialan to transfer immortality to him in times of crisis, protecting his life while putting herself in danger. He didn't want his closest people to give up their chance to survive because of him. He had to establish ground rules with Jialan. Jialan looked at Lin Chia's determined eyes and tentatively asked, what if? I don't agree. Lin Chia was stunned, stammering, if you don't agree, I'll. Oh. He really hadn't thought about what he could do if Jialan didn't agree. Expel Jialan from Night Curtain? That seemed too harsh. Beat her up? Don't joke, in a real fight Lin Chia would probably be the one getting beaten. After thinking for a long time, Lin Chia couldn't come up with a good punishment method. After stammering for a while, Lin Chia seemed to make up his mind, looking into Jialan's eyes and saying word by word, if you don't agree from today on, I will not actively communicate with you, nor will I respond to any of your words, nor will I react to any of your actions. Jialan blinked and after processing for a while replied, are you trying to say, if I don't agree you'll ignore me? Yes. Jialan. Looking at the extremely serious Lin Chia before her, Jialan somehow found him inexplicably cute. All right, I promise you. Jialan stuck out her tongue. Seeing this, Lin Chia nodded slightly and turned to walk into the broken palace. Though called a palace, what stood before Lin Chia now was just several broken walls barely forming a circle, collapsed pillars and dome shattered into stones all over the ground. Standing inside the palace, one could see the red moon in the sky without any obstruction. There seems to be nothing here. Jialon looked around and asked puzzledly, "Why did Uncle Merlin ask us to come here?" Lin Chia's gaze also swept around, and after hesitating for a while he released his spiritual power. Soon he fixed his gaze on the scattered stone blocks beneath his feet. "It's here." A streak of night color spread out from Lin Chia's body, like ink, quickly dyeing all the white stone fragments black. His fingertips lifted slightly and countless fragments flew up into the air. On the ground of the broken palace, murals drawn with crimson strokes were grotesquely exposed before the two, as if sketched with blood. "This is..." Jialon stood frozen. "These are murals about the divine war in Takamagara from over 50 years ago." Lin Chia's gaze swept across the ground as he spoke thoughtfully. "During the Battle of the Gods, some deity must have barely maintained consciousness under the red moon and recorded everything with their divine blood." Lin Chia crouched down and began carefully observing from the beginning of the murals. In the first painting, crude blood strokes depicted countless divine shadows standing in mid-air, seemingly looking up at the sky. Above them, a red moon hung silently in the sky. Among these rough divine shadows, 3 figures standing at the top were particularly prominent. One divine shadow had a sun drawn on its forehead, one had a moon and one had a wave. "Who are they?" Jialon pointed at the 3 shadows and asked curiously. Lin Chia pondered for a moment. In Japanese mythology, the father god Izanagi first gave birth to 3 children: Amaterasu, who ruled the sun, Tsukuyomi, who ruled the moon, and Susanoo, who ruled the ocean. These 3 deities led Takamagara and held positions above all other gods. If I'm not mistaken, these 3 figures represent them. Lin Chia's gaze moved to the next mural. In this mural, among the 3 divine shadows, the one symbolizing the moon suddenly changed direction. He stood under the red moon, holding a weapon that pierced into Amaterasu, who symbolized the sun. This painting deliberately enlarged his eyes, with crimson blood heavily layered several times in his pupils, appearing almost black and extremely eerie. "The traitor was him?" Lin Chia exclaimed in surprise. Jialon examined it carefully. "Does this painting mean that Tsukuyomi, who symbolizes the moon, sided with the red moon and unexpectedly stabbed his weapon into Amaterasu?" "Yes." Lin Chia thought seriously for a moment and continued, "This makes sense. I should have thought of it earlier." Among the 3 supreme gods of Takamagara, Tsukuyomi extremely revered the power of the moon, and his divine power was closely connected to it. If the moon was corrupted by the Cthulhu gods, he would definitely be the first to be affected. Jialon thought for a moment. Like Qin Yongrong in the fishing village? Probably. Lin Chia pointed to Tsukuyomi's eerie eyes in the mural. His eyes and frenzied expression look very similar to Qin Yongrong's. If I'm not mistaken, he must have also heard the whispers of the red moon and completely succumbed to the brainwashing of the Cthulhu gods. I've always had a question. With so many divine realms in the world, why did Cthulhu specifically target Takamagara? Now it seems, besides the fact that Takamagara was isolated and the red moon's descent wouldn't attract attention from other divine realms, Tsukuyomi's existence was also a crucial factor. After all, other divine realms didn't have supreme gods who worshipped the moon. Having Tsukuyomi as a card they could control at any time meant they could unexpectedly control another supreme god, greatly reducing their resistance in conquering Takamagara. Lin Chia walked to the 3rd mural and looked down again. The content of this mural is quite complex, with the deities of Takamagara divided into 2 groups, positioned at the upper and lower parts of the mural. In the upper battlefield, Amaterasu, symbolizing the sun with Tsukuyomi's weapon pierced through her chest, is fighting against Tsukuyomi, who has been corrupted by the red moon. Her right hand blocks Tsukuyomi's attack, while her left hand, extending towards the lower part of the mural, drops a sword and a red magatama. In the lower battlefield, numerous deities of Takamagara have all lost their sanity and are killing each other. Only Susanoo, who symbolizes the ocean, steps forward to catch the sword and magatama. The content of this mural is clear. After Tsukuyomi's betrayal, he engaged in fierce battle with Amaterasu, who then threw the Kusanagi sword and Yasukani no Magatama to Susanoo. Lin Chia's gaze fell on the final mural. His eyes narrowed. In this mural, Amaterasu and Tsukuyomi had pierced each other with their weapons, falling from the heavens. In the lower battlefield, Susanoo, holding the two divine artifacts, began frantically hunting down other insane deities, leaving corpses everywhere. The murals ended here. Lin Chia finished viewing all the murals and took a deep breath. So that's what happened. So after Amaterasu and Tsukuyomi died together, Susanoo killed all the maddened Takamagara deities? Jialan suddenly realized, no wonder although Takamagara fell, no insane deity escaped. But I still have one question. Lin Chia's gaze fell on Susanoo in the fourth mural, who was frantically hunting other deities. How did he maintain his sanity under the red moon? Just as Lin Chia finished speaking, the ground beneath their feet began to shake violently. Roar. A thunderous roar came from the depths of Takamagara. Terrible waves of pressure swept through, making Lin Chia's eardrums ache. He turned his head toward the direction of the roar. Is it Susanoo? Lin Chia froze for a moment, then grabbed Jialan and rushed out of the palace. Just as they returned to where they had dismounted from the carriage, a rich meat aroma wafted over. They saw that Merlin had removed his magic robe and transformed into a chef wearing a tall hat, sitting calmly beside the carriage. Somehow he had already set up a grill in front of him, with several skewers of lamb meat rotating slowly above it, which was the source of the aroma. Merlin sprinkled cumin on the lamb while looking at the dumbfounded Lin Chia and Jialan, raising an eyebrow. Finished so quickly? My meat isn't even ready yet. Lin Chia stood frozen in place. Sir Merlin, you're preparing dinner. Merlin casually put down the cumin powder. I'm pretty much tired of the food in the hospital. Now that I'm finally out, I wanted to eat something different. Lin Chia looked at the lamb skewers in the grill, his mouth twitching slightly. Western gods. Also like Xinjiang lamb skewers? I happened to learn a bit when I traveled to Great Xia hundreds of years ago. Merlin smiled slightly. Lin Chia. There were too many things to comment on, and Lin Chia didn't know where to start, so he simply changed the subject and asked. Sir Merlin, did you hear that sound? I did, Merlin continued, grilling calmly while speaking. The large-scale pollution from the whale's fall has started to corrode Susanoo's divine consciousness. Even the Yasukani no Magatama can't protect him anymore. He's going mad. Hearing the continuous roars and howls from the distance, Lin Chia's brow furrowed deeper. Merlin glanced at him and silently handed 2 freshly grilled lamb skewers to him and Jialan, smiling as he asked, So, why did you rush out so hurriedly just now? What were you worried about? Lin Chia took the skewer and after a moment of silence, honestly said, I was worried you would abandon us and go kill Susanoo alone. Why would I kill him? Didn't you come to Takamagara to stop this catastrophe? Aren't you here to kill him? Lin Chia asked in return. Merlin's smile deepened as he shook his head. I've said before, wizards aren't good at direct combat. Rather than fighting, I'm more interested in truth and reality. Besides, someone will stop this catastrophe. Someone will stop it? Who? Lin Chia asked, puzzled. Now that all the Takamagara deities had been killed by Susanoo, once he loses his sanity he would surely break out of Takamagara and threaten Great Xia. To eliminate this catastrophe, Susanoo must be killed. In Lin Chia's impression, there weren't many people who could slay gods. Apart from the still missing Great Xia deities, only Zhou Ping had such qualification. But wasn't he overseas? Could Zhou Ping be returning? Merlin spoke calmly. All things happen according to heaven's will. When the time comes you'll know. Seeing that Merlin was unwilling to elaborate, Lin Chia could only shrug and lower his head to eat the lamb skewer, appearing distracted. Gulp. A clear swallowing sound came from beside him. Lin Chia started, turning to look, and saw that Jialan had already finished her lamb skewer and was staring intently at the other skewers Merlin was grilling, her eyes practically overflowing with desire. This maiden who had slept for 1,000 years was eating lamb skewers for the first time. Judging from her expression, she had been completely captivated. This was the first time Lin Chia had seen Jialan show such intense love for any food, and he raised his eyebrows in surprise. Noticing Lin Chia's gaze, Jialan's body trembled almost imperceptibly, seemingly realizing that such behavior might damage her image. She quietly turned her head away, her cheeks slightly red as she said, I'm full. Lin Chia. Maybe you should wipe your drool first before speaking? Seeing this scene, Merlin's lips curved into a smile as he grabbed several lamb skewers and offered them to Jelon again. Young lady wants some more? Jelon looked at the fragrant lamb skewers, her resolve wavering, but after glancing at Lin Chia from the corner of her eye, she still turned her head away, saying softly, I really can't eat any more. Seeing this, Merlin withdrew the skewers while speaking helplessly, can't eat any more? That's a shame, I grilled so many skewers, the extra ones will have to be thrown away. Merlin casually picked up a handful of skewers, about to throw them away. Pat. At that moment, a shadow flashed by as Jelon suddenly reached out and firmly grabbed Merlin's wrist. Jelon coughed lightly, gently brushed aside a lock of her black hair and said somewhat sheepishly, since you've grilled too many, well, we can't let them go to waste, right? I'll eat a bit more. Just a little bit.